Yeah.
Are you guys posting this anywhere or?
Spotify,
YouTube. Plug.
Like,
Go listen
Go
on
listen.
Spotify and YouTube. Okay.
subscribe.
And
Are we ready? Do
Look.
you want to?
yeah, go for it.
What were you gonna say?
Nothing. No, dude. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
I talk too much.
Okay. All right. We are here on Gathered Around the Table podcast. This is episode 2. Last episode, we interviewed Yesley, and we talked about her story and her experience. And we talked a lot about DACA as well. This episode 2, we have Ola. Can you say your last name?
Dziedzic.
Perfect. I did say it earlier for the record.
On, man. That's really good.
I did
Wow.
Practicing.
You've been practicing?
But Ola is from Poland, and she's here at Moody. This is her, she's finishing her junior year here at
That's
Moody,
right.
which is crazy. So, let's kind of just start with our little icebreaker. I didn't think of one prior to this.
Yeah, you did.
Did I?
Yep.
Is it on there? Oh, that's... Okay.
Really?
Okay. So this is from Sadie. I would ask a better question, but if you could have
Gosh.
if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
That was on there.
Yeah.
No, I think I didn't include
swear
that
I
because I
did
wanted
not
to catch
see
you
that.
off guard.
Oh.
I wanted it to be a raw,
surprise,
authentic
right.
answer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and obviously Jesus is not an answer.
No, you can't say that.
No, not Jesus.
No, let's just.
Yeah.
Should we say no Bible characters?
Yeah, no Bible characters.
Because that's what I would do. I'd be like Abraham.
Yeah, I guess.
You pick Abraham?
I had to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, father of many nations.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Okay.
Please.
You're right.
Oh.
Well,
Right?
now we're answering it towards the Bible. Okay. Anyways.
We'll cut this out.
I had to answer that question for one of my youth group games recently, and I said Bonhoeffer. Just to seem like I'm this smart theology person.
Right.
So I
Right.
think I
That
might
makes
just
sense.
stick with
Herman
it, you know?
Bavinck. That's who I would. Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
Who would you?
I don't know. This is like super basic, but like Abraham Lincoln, I think would be so sick to sit down and talk to.
Interesting.
I don't
Honestly, yeah.
know. Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, he did a couple things.
He did.
So,
One or two.
Just a few.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
What about you?
My answer is also kind of basic, but like Amelia Earhart, just as
That's not
would be
basic.
okay.
I was not expecting you were gonna say that.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
That's
I just think like she was very forefront, obviously in the, women in STEM. Not really. But like she just
Women.
it's okay.
Women.
Yeah.
right.
But just her experience and what she faced and kind of what she had to overcome, but also like the strength that it took to just like do it. And yeah, I think that's cool.
Sick.
Yeah.
So is it a name Abraham or?
Yeah, just like that's really what I like to name all my kids. Abraham,
What?
Abram.
What is it like to be
Abram?
named Abraham?
That's
I have a
that's
cousin named
all my
Abraham.
questions. Okay, let's talk about your name. Actually, let's not talk about anything you did. Let's talk about
I
Abraham.
sense the pattern. That's what I was-
Right. That's good. You catch on. Nice. That's good.
Okay.
All right. So shall we actually jump into like the actual questions?
Let's do it.
Sick. Okay. So can you give us like a little snapshot of your testimony? So kind of like where you come from and then how you transitioned over to Moody.
Yeah. So as Sadie said, I'm from Poland. I was born and raised there. My testimony with how I gave my life to Christ as well.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
okay.
That'd be good.
So I grew up in a Roman Catholic family, which is quite typical for Poland. That's the leading religion still, though it's definitely becoming less and less. But on the contrary to typical Catholic families, my parents were very devout, so they made sure to raise me and my brother in the same kind of spirit, just make sure that we are very grounded in this tradition and celebrate everything that Roman Catholic Church celebrates. So I grew up in that. So the concept of faith, of God, was always there, kind of familiar. Religion was so natural, something so normal. But it was only when I was 9 and one of my close friends at the time, she was from a Protestant church, which is not really that common of a situation to be in, because it's like 0.2% for Poland of people who are in the evangelical church. And since we were friends, her mom invited me to one of the summer camps, which I ended up going to because my parents didn't see anything wrong with it. And I loved it. I ended up going every summer after that for some years. And it was pretty revolutionary for me, because though I was familiar with the whole God concept and who God was, the way it was introduced to me there was just, for some reason, it got to me so much more and was just so much more personal and relatable, and just like God seemed approachable because he wanted to be approached. So after going to those camps for some summers and then still being very much Catholic every other week, I was trying to build that religious foundation more, because I have seen value of that, but it wasn't really the same on a regular basis as it was at those camps. Like there's something was missing, and I was basically just following a religious system, not having faith in God. I have not given my life fully to him. And it wasn't until I was 15 that there's been some more exposure to faith and to Protestant church and to seeing people fully worshiping God with their lives. I went to a conference in Poland where there was like 1,000 people just worshiping together with their arms high, which I've never seen before. I don't think I've heard that much contemporary Christian music at that point. And that meant so much to me. At that time, it really showed me that God wants all of me. He wants me to worship him with passion the way I am. And after that conference, I was convinced that this is what I've been searching for and what's been missing. This relationship with God, like real relationship, close relationship that he created me for. But I still didn't know really how to build that, how to get there, and just the emotional experience that I've had at the conference was enough. But that same summer, before the summer, I started going to youth groups, which already was very helpful to have that community, and my youth leaders have been so impactful, and the youth group in general really helped to keep me grounded and focused on that goal of building my relationship with God. But that summer, I also went to different summer camps, still Protestant, still Christian, and there I feel like I was explained the gospel, and I could really see that I've never gave my life to Christ. I've known him or about him my whole life, but I haven't like truly know him. So that was when I decided to make that decision and follow God. And after that, I decided, okay, I should be in a church that I agree with, because at that point I started noticing. So I started noticing differences pretty early on, but at that point I kind of saw what those differences were, and I could tell that, okay, I agree with the Protestant church more, and I want to be in a community that relies solely on the scripture, and also on a community that worships God in such a real way. So I knew, okay, I'm gonna transition to this church, and that's what happened. And that same year, I was praying to God to guide me where I should go with my life, because I had no idea. And since I decided to follow him seriously, and he gave me a new life, I was seeking that from him. And one day I was praying, and he just gave me that sense of understanding. I want you in ministry, just through the images and past memories he put in my mind. I could really see that, okay, this is the vision he's giving me, which made and didn't make sense at the same time, because I was still very new to that, and I didn't even know it was a job at that point. But I've talked to my youth leader. She kind of explained to me more what it can look like. She was the first person that told me about Moody. It was like 6 years ago, I think. And I just held to the idea. I at that point got a kind of an idea or a dream to go to school for that, to go to a college, which I found out then that even exists. I didn't know there are Bible colleges like this.
Mhm.
And since I could speak English, I wanted to grow in that. I wanted to go somewhere, which I thought was going to be UK, but here we are. And and later on, the Lord opened the doors to Moody.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Follow-up question just about kind of your story. You said you had a brother. Is he older or younger? And what's the age gap on that?
Older, like almost 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he, when you were kind of transitioning from like you're growing up in the Roman Catholic Church and you're believing this, but then you're seeing this Protestant way and you're kind of like, oh, this has something different to offer. Was he kind of with you on that? Were you guys kind of having parallel experiences, or was he kind of either sticking with Roman Catholic or doing his own thing? Where was he on that?
That's a really good question, because it's actually like a complete opposite.
Okay.
Basically, I think it was before for him, because he was very much raised in the same environment as me. Both of us were very involved in the Catholic Church. Him even more, because he was a guy. He could do all those things that I wasn't allowed to. And he was very much involved. But then something that's very typical for youth in the Roman Catholic Church, at least in Poland, but I think that's a pattern many places, it's you get confirmed just so that you have those benefits of church wedding or different things like this. And then you kind of just go your own way, and you don't need to go to church that much. You don't need to do anything. So my brother, on the contrary to me, got confirmed. I decided not to go through that, because at that time I already changed churches. But he got confirmed, but then he decided, I don't want to be that involved in the church anymore. And I think that led him to, I don't see the importance of faith at all in my life, because I don't think he's ever had faith. He just went to church. He just lived in that
following
Roman Catholic environment. And when he didn't have the pressure of doing it anymore either, he just completely left it. So he's, I believe he would say he's an atheist now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it's more of like a spiritual apathy, or he just decided, I don't want this anymore, like an intellectual thing?
I think both.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think he just didn't have faith, didn't see the true significance of God in his life. But then I've talked to him some about it, and I think he's very postmodern thinking. So I don't know how intellectual that reasoning is. It's not like there's no proof. For him, it's just not my truth. You can have your proof, but it's not my truth. So I'd say that's how he would explain it.
How do your parents feel about you, like coming all the way over to Moody? Like, what was that experience like for them, like seeing their daughter go to an evangelical church and then also go to the U.S.?
Yeah, that was a long journey and transition, and it had many different expressions. So at the beginning, it was definitely not exciting. It was pretty disappointing, and they didn't see that coming, surprisingly, which they blamed themselves for that even more, because it was happening under our noses, and we encouraged that. We allowed her to go to all those camps. We basically caused this to happen, which for them wasn't something to be proud for. Like, oh, our daughter, is wanting to follow God with her life. It was, no, our daughter has left our tradition, has left our church, and is now in this different church, which we do not necessarily thing as bad, because there is this conception of every other church than Roman Catholic being a cult in Poland, but that wasn't my parents, thankfully. They could say, okay, we know this is not a cult, but they couldn't really reason it, but just with their commitment to tradition, it was enough that, okay, it's not Roman Catholic. That means it's worse, and she should be in the church that our family is in. So at first there was disappointment. There was trying to convince me to stay, arguing with me, which I definitely did not make that any easier. I look back and I am so disappointed with the way I handled it, being just a prideful teenager, so excited that I found the truth. I realized, oh, like these are the things that Roman Catholic Church does wrong, and I'm gonna bring this to my family and they're gonna follow me, which didn't happen. My parents were like, no, we still think this is what we should do because we've always done that. So that caused me to be prideful and just encourage those arguments and try to even boast in all the knowledge I had that they didn't have. So that definitely caused some disruption in our family and just pulled us different directions. But in all of this happening, my parents never said, you're not allowed to do this. Because they could. I was 15. They could have said, no, you're just not going to go to that church, or we're going to disown you. Or they had a lot of arguments, a lot of cards they could have pulled at me. But they didn't, which I thank God for. So then they would slowly stop arguing with me. We would just slowly let each other do our own thing. And then a few years later, when it was the time to finally start taking real steps towards going to college, because that idea was in my head, but I wasn't sharing it with my parents. But then I had to, because I had to start doing something. I remember telling my parents about Moody and saying, this is the school I want to apply to. And the only question I was asked by my dad was, is it a cult? Which I said no. And he said, okay, we want to support you with what your dreams are. So I don't know exactly what happened there, but I know it didn't really have that much to do with me. It was purely God's work in my parents' hearts, so that after some years they could just get more used to not only this reality, but even, I think, accepted more. And talking to my mom especially, I could tell that that whole thing happening pushed her to seek God and not just religion, not just the church as not even the body of Christ, but institution. It pushed her to really seek the truth. And from what she told me, I truly believe that this is where, I don't know if she had or didn't have faith before, but I can tell, like, that's when she definitely went deeper in her faith and experienced God in a whole new way. And then at this point, for example, my parents have been to my church a few times with me, especially my mom. Every time I'm home, she goes with me every Sunday. She watches online every Sunday, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
And she even went without me a few times. So they're both very much...
They're intrigued at least. Yeah.
And they appreciate my church a lot. Still very much Catholic, would go to Mass every Sunday. Like, just going to the service is not enough. But at the same time, are very friendly towards my church and enjoy it a lot too. So, it's
that's wonderful.
Long journey.
Right.
Really great one.
Yeah. So, coming to Moody then, that kind of actually segues us pretty nicely into the next topic that I want to cover, is just like, what was the process like for you to get here? And obviously, sounds like your parents did help you with it, because, I mean, you're young at this point, like, you're trying to figure out what international education looks like, but what did that look like for you specifically?
Yeah, the throwback to that. That's gonna be so fun. So I didn't start looking into colleges until my senior year of high school, because that's just kind of the approach you have in Poland.
That's what I did too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I've seen shows like, Gilmore Girls, where Rory's thinking about Harvard for her whole life.
Oh my god.
So I know there's this different approach to colleges sometimes in US, but I don't think college has ever had this kind of glory to it in Poland. So it's just something you start
Interesting.
thinking about later on. Maybe some people do earlier, but I started thinking about it like specifically my senior year, and I knew at that point, okay, I'm staying with this idea that the Lord has put in my heart a few years ago. I've seen Him confirm that and grow that even more, so I want to pursue it further. So I think first step was me meeting again with my youth leader and just brainstorming, doing our research, creating like a Google spreadsheet with different college options and writing down like, oh, what would it cost? Where is it? What are the program options? Just details like this. And the schools that I can remember being under was definitely Moody. Moody was the school I remember her mentioning, the school she was familiar with the most. Biola was there.
Yeah.
But
Classic.
the money definitely was immediate pass. There was like Portland Bible College and just some kind of random schools that we found. Hillsong Bible College, I think, was there at that point. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I
thought that one was crossed off the list.
Yeah. And then after that, it was a lot of research. And the more I got to know Moody's program and what it looked like, I was just so amazed how possible it was for somebody from a different country, from a different continent, like the whole no tuition thing, or even it was right after COVID, so I didn't have to get this big language certificate that usually you need to get to be in an English-speaking school. I could just it was a Duolingo test that you take for an hour on your computer, and it costs like 10 times less. I kid you not.
That's
so
insane.
that was a huge blessing. And then they had the major I wanted, which at the time was youth ministry. I think that's what God wanted to use to pull me in, because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
What major are you now?
Biblical studies.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
And so that was this just research process of, okay, what would be possible? And then also just talking to my church, talking to people I knew, and people were actually familiar with Moody, which was a really important aspect.
That's cool.
I was going to a country where I had some connections, which was also very much a God thing, that He gave me connections in the US before I even came there. But I didn't have family. I didn't really know anything about Moody. So to hear, like, even my pastor say, oh, yes, I've heard about this school. He would, after I committed to going to Moody, or even now that I am at Moody, and when I come back, he always is, it's the greatest Bible school in America. He always says that.
Cool.
I decided not to correct it. But so, it was very highly viewed at my home, which was important. So when I finally decided, okay, it's going to be Moody, it was just filling out the application, which I imagine was pretty typical for everyone, which I had to do much in advance. Like, I started all of that November 2021. I came here August 2022.
Okay.
So November is when I started applying. I had to fill out all the essays, the English test. And then after I got accepted on Valentine's Day, I got a Valentine from Moody saying.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's so cute.
I got accepted, but I only got an email. I never got like that. I would show
like a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go on Instagram and everyone would be posting with their letters.
Where's my letter?
I just got an email.
Where is my letter?
Exactly.
You print out the email.
Yeah,
funny.
no grudge held, but I still appreciate the letter. And then after I got accepted, it was deciding, like, committing, do I want to go, which actually was a really interesting story, because even though it was such a dream of mine to go with Moody, I actually had to wrestle with God about it a lot, starting from, I think, January that year till about April, because I think I've made it such an dream in my life, something so desirable, that all of my attention, all of my focus was on that thing, was I'm going to this Bible college in America. That was what I was focusing at, and neglecting anything else. And I was almost making it to be like, this is my goal. Like, this is what God has made me for, to go to school right now, which is obviously not a thing.
Yeah.
He made me for himself. Like, he was the goal his whole time, and Moody was just a part of the story.
Yeah.
But basically, I was so fixated on that idea of going to this college that all of a sudden, early that year in January, I started having those huge doubts. Like, is it even God's dream for me, or is it just mine? Like, does God actually want me there? And I could not tell if he was confirming it or denying. I was just so uneasy about it, so confused. And I really wanted his affirmation, because it was this huge step I was about to take, go to school in America. So I was looking to have the tangible almost proof that, okay, this is what I want you to do. But I didn't have it. I almost had this confusion. So I couldn't understand what was happening. I almost got a sense that God wanted me to go to this small Bible school in Poland instead, which I really wasn't excited about, because comparing to Moody, it was just not.
Right.
But then I almost had this logic that, sometimes God does use that things that seem smaller. So I don't know. I was just so fixating, not on even just being in God's presence, but on finding his will, not on finding him, that I couldn't tell what he was trying to tell me. And I remember being so upset about that and so restless. And it's actually a cool story, but basically now looking back, I can tell that God just needed to cloud my vision a little bit to make me focus on the present, to then him being the one that's gonna reveal the step after step and guide me step after step, so that I don't try to achieve this dream without him. And I remember in February, end of February, I was going to school, and I was planning how I'm going to start fundraising for my school and use this as confirmation. If I see God provide, I'm going to know this is where he's guiding me. And that same day, the war in Ukraine happened, which I found out later that day, even though it started like before. But that day I decided not to use social media to be like really in tune to what God is doing, which is ironic. And at school I found out that the war in Ukraine has happened. And I've been to Ukraine the summer before that and absolutely loved it. Got to know people from there and loved those people. So that really made a big impact on me. It really shook me. I took it very seriously, not just because we're now right next door, but because I knew people there and I cared about those people. So at that moment, I decided to drop all the plans I had for Moody, because there's literally a war. There's people I know and millions of people I don't know who need to flee their country because of this war. I'm not going to be fundraising for my school in America. Like, no, this is a bigger need. This is more important. So since then, my main focus was serving at the refugee center, which we opened at my camp with my youth leaders. And I decided not to think about Moody, not to think about that, to just keep serving and to just be present to that moment. And there would still be like some thoughts about it in the back of my head, but I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I wouldn't allow myself to think about it, because I know how much it consumed me before, and I just knew I cannot let that happen again. And we had a lot of American missionaries come to our camp, including some missionaries that are involved in like Polish Christian ministries. And I got to talk to them a little bit about, like I am considering going to this school. I got accepted, but I haven't taken any further steps. And that was actually a confirmation I was getting from God, because those people were giving me such a support and encouragement. And I've all of a sudden got connections in Indiana and Michigan or even South Illinois, which was crazy because I have not known any. I didn't know Illinois was a state. I'm pretty sure.
It's okay.
Indiana.
Probably
Just
me
Chicago.
either.
That's all
Yeah.
Illinois, just Chicago.
And also they were willing to support me financially without me even seeking. Like it was just support came to me. So at that time, as I stopped focusing on it so much, I just started having so much more peace about it at the same time. So I decided to put my deposit in, to take that step, and then to go through whole visa procedure, which I need to fill out this long document with tons of questions that I needed to go to the embassy in Warsaw, get interviewed, which turned out to be much easier than I anticipated. And then, mail some documents back and forth with Moody. And that was basically, and then book my flights and come. And another thing, my other youth leader is American, which was a huge blessing as well. So his ministry from Connecticut, they offered me to come a month early and stay in Connecticut for the summer. And then they offered me to serve with them, so they paid for my flight as part of that, which was also a huge blessing.
Amazing.
And then they helped me to get from Connecticut to Chicago, which was an easier transition than if I was to come straight from Poland. So there were just those huge blessings that came to me, like were given to me, that I didn't even have to seek for or look for. Like the Lord just brought those people where I was. And I still definitely had not had that 100% certainty coming to the US that, oh yes, I know this is what the Lord knows. But I've also at that point received not only a lot of comfort from the Lord in prayer, but also a lot of counsel from people of, it's not about, something that Dr. Coakley talked about in class recently. God's will is not necessarily a line. It's more of a circle. It's you follow the Lord, and it can take different ways. It can look differently, but it's about you seeking the Lord. It's not about you seeking this particular thing that the Lord has for you. So my mindset started changing more towards that in that time, because I definitely was a person that thought, no, like this is a line. And if I miss a detail, it's derailed. I went the wrong. Exactly. I missed God's plan. Something's wrong. Which was a very, bad way
paralyzing.
of thinking. Exactly. So much anxiety. But at that point, the Lord has definitely started to change that. And I had more confidence making that decision and flying. And it wasn't even a month in when I was in the States. Not yet at Moody, but in the States, I could tell.
Wow.
This is it. Yeah, the Lord is
That's
here.
amazing.
Like He's with me, and I can see His hand in all of it. So it was a stressful story at the time, but a big testimony for me now.
Yeah. I'm wondering now, like, so initially, it sounds like your transition here was pretty, like, kind of laid out in front of you as far as, like, visa stuff. Like, was that kind of a struggle, or has it turned into a struggle at all? Like, I mean, you've been here for almost three full school years now, right? So going back for breaks and stuff, like, what has that been looking like for you, and just in the U.S. and Poland and that, like, interrelation? How does that work for you?
I'd say Poland is in a very good position. Like, our relationship with the States is strong, so I don't have to worry much about any kind of issues. Like, even getting a visa, there's a website that when you apply for a visa, you can check what is the percentage of like people in your country that get it. Poland's very high percentage. It's not really an issue to get a visa being from Poland. So because of that, I haven't had much of those kind of issues, which I'm really thankful for. I don't know what it's going to look like after I graduate and depends where the Lord wants me. Like if I were to stay in the States, that would create some new
Extra.
not really issues, but just steps to take to
Yeah.
renew my visa, get a different visa. That would kind of force me to go through this process again.
Mm-hmm.
But being here right now, I didn't really have to do anything. So other than expensive flights
Yeah.
and a long line every time we fly back from Poland.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite part of going home and coming back is that what you call it, passport control at the airport in the US. Like after you fly from abroad, America is so bad at it. Like almost every country now has this digital control that you only scan your passport, you walk in, you're welcome. But in America, even Americans have to stand in this long line returning from abroad, which it takes so long.
Was that be considered customs?
I think.
Or is that okay?
So.
Or is it a different different process?
I have no idea.
Okay.
None.
I thought you were saying no. And I was
no,
like,
I just
wow,
have
you really know
I
your
have
stuff.
no earthly idea.
Okay.
I've been on an airplane once,
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
and I was like 2.
Aw.
So yeah, I pulled a lady's hair
You
the
did?
whole the whole
Is that why
flight.
you haven't gone on a plane again?
yeah. That they
You've been
barred me.
banned.
They banned me from all planes. Yeah, right.
That's really funny.
Okay, so I'm curious about like a lot of things. I feel like I could ask you like a million questions right now. But one thing that I'm curious of is how you've seen God move the most in your time coming over from Poland and then now since you've been here. Because you've talked about God doing a lot of different things in a lot of different places and blessing you in different ways. What has been, you think, something that like stands out the most to you? Maybe like a moment. It could be like a moment, like an event, or it could be just like an idea or something that just keeps coming up.
That is a huge question.
Yeah, I know.
'Cause God has done so much during my time here. But I think in the light of what I just shared and just the journey of getting here, a big part of it was reframing a lot of my thinking. Because even though I can definitely tell I had genuine faith at that point and the Lord was working in my life, even with the little knowledge about Him that I had previous to Moody, He has grew that knowledge so much since I've been here, and not in just academic ways, but in just so many experiential. Yes, not experimental, big difference. Experiential ways. So I'd say I got to be healed of many of those false perceptions that I had about God, and almost sometimes seeing Him from a really false perspective of someone that puts those expectations at me that I'm not able to fulfill. I've recognized that I've had a lot of that view in my life, even not being aware of it all the time. So being at Moody and learning the Bible, learning theology has definitely helped to shape that and to fix my view of God, which is, as Tozer says, like it is the most important thing about you. And I've experienced, I would never say that is true prior to Moody. I would probably not really think about it that much. But being at Moody, I can tell that that's how it worked in my life. The more I've grew to know about God and the more my theology, my implicit theology that was false was fixed and straightened, the better my relationship with God has been and the better my life has been, not in a sense of, some prosperity gospel, but that even in the tough times, even in the suffering, I've been able to see God with the right perspective and not the false one. So I think that is a big part of the answer to that question. Yeah.
There's like an alignment of like you're right with God and you're seeing Him rightly. And so then you're like the outlets of your life kind of not fall into place, because that sounds like you aren't working at it. But at the same time, it's like these classes are just helping that. They're an aid to that and not the forefront. Like you're seeking after God and he's meeting you, and that's how it's falling into place. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Just like, I'm very curious, what is like culture shock here in the US? Like, what was your biggest, like, what the frick? Why are we doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question, which I'm not always able to answer that well, because I think in some ways I feel things being different without really being able to name them. But some of the typical ones that I usually say is one that I keep mentioning every time I go to youth group is teenagers driving. That's just crazy to me.
Oh.
You have to be
What's the
18
age?
to drive in Poland.
Oh, wow.
18. You have to be an
Wow.
adult to drive.
Not 14. Like you can get your permit here.
That's
15.
insane to me.
Okay, 14 in some states.
Really?
Yeah. In Indiana, you can get your
No.
permit.
It's 15.
In Indiana?
Yeah.
I definitely was driving at 14, so
I was
that is my bad.
No, that's
This
definitely
proves
15.
my point.
There's-
It should be 18, guys.
They must do it differently in Northern Indiana than they do in Southern
Do you not
Indiana.
think I'm a good driver?
I've never driven, but hearing
Are we
the
taking guesses?
stories.
Right.
Are we-
No.
okay.
Don't guess. I'm scared of the answer. Okay, anyway, so
It's
teen
15.
drivers.
Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
teenage drivers. I remember when I was in Connecticut during my first and second summer in the U.S., I got to drive a bit. Drive on a highway, which I would never do at home because I would just drive in my small town. So that was a big thing for me. I felt so adult, so mature. And then I would get that thought, like, there's probably a 15-year-old just
Oh,
passing
no.
on this
Yeah.
Oh, no,
highway.
that's
Right.
terrible.
And that was, I could not make sense of it. Or seeing, like even now, my PCM is a youth group, and seeing teenagers
Yeah.
drive to youth group in Chicago. They've just driven through Chicago streets.
And it's so second nature. Like that's just what
Yeah.
it is.
So that was definitely a big one.
Okay.
And then another one that comes to my mind is just people saying, how are you, or what's up as a hello. So not in a conversational way, or we just, talking like, oh, how are you? And I'm actually here to listen to your response. But in a, we were both walking, we were passing each other by.
Oh.
And during the 3-second interaction that we're gonna have, you're asking me how I am. Like, what is up with that? What am I supposed? Am I
Right.
supposed to answer?
Like fully
how I
answer.
am?
Yeah.
Or am I supposed? I've also seen like in the movies people just saying how are you, and the other person answer how are you. So there was never exchange
Yeah.
of answers.
Yeah.
There was just
The social
question.
dance is different.
Exactly. And I remember, there were some times at Moody when I was actually going through
Wow.
some rough times and being asked, how are you? During a
Like, what do I
3-second
say?
interaction was not my favorite part of the
No.
day.
Right.
Or did you just have to be like, I'm fine? Like, what did you?
Yeah, I
answer with?
always would be
Okay.
like, good.
Wait,
Yeah.
so like in Poland, like what?
You just say
When you-
hi.
Oh, you just had, okay.
Hello. I mean, in Polish, but
Right.
and how are you is reserved for a conversation when I actually want to hear your answer.
Uh-huh. Right.
You'd think that's
Right.
crazy.
Funny how that works,
Yeah, but we're America, so we do everything right. So,
So
the whole world revolves around us, of
So
course. So
Unfortunately.
right.
Okay, this one, answer how you will. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but how does Moody do with their international program, I guess, and like what has been your experience, and what is something that like you think that maybe could be changed or could be better or could have helped you in your experience here?
Yeah. I fortunately don't think like I have to rely too much on the international student office being at Moody. I don't think I've required that much of them since being here, which is a huge blessing I'm grateful for. But I do remember applying to Moody. There have been instances when I was quite unhappy with the help I've received from the International Student Office. I not only the response time of me sending an email and the number of days it took to actually get a response, but there actually seemed to be some issues that I don't think ISO was able to help me navigate, which I think it is a big requirement to put on people to know how to navigate applying from so many different countries. So, because I imagine it must look differently in every country. But then there were some things. I remember one particular thing. I was getting my transcript from my school, which my school, I don't know if they've ever had anybody go to US, because they had no idea what I needed from them. Because in Poland, usually the thing is you don't need your grades. Your grades basically don't matter. It's your final exams that matter to get to college, which was completely the opposite for Moody. They didn't care about my final exams because I also was applying before I even took them, but they cared about my grades. And I needed to send them my grades transcript when I was still not even finished with my year. And, well, not only my school didn't know what I needed, but then Moody didn't really know how to help me with getting that. So I basically needed to navigate it all on my own, which worked out. Praise God. But yes, I remember I quite early recognized that, okay, I will not rely on them with questions. I'll just kind of trust the Lord and just to best of my understanding, figure out what's the best way to handle those issues and get everything. So I remember some issues with that. And I think one thing, I guess, I don't know how it works in America with taxes. I know that you have to be certified to help people with taxes. So I know it's not their fault that ISO is not able to help us with taxes. But I think that was a thing for me when I wished. Yeah. I kind of wish some of you could help me because I don't want to pay for a professional person to help me. Yeah. But I think it's America's fault, not ISO's.
Right.
But yeah.
That's fair. I don't know if we should play it off like you're actually cool. Leslie's jumping in.
I've just been enjoying really to hear your story.
Oh.
It's so impactful. And to just sit there and like see how God has opened so many doors and has been working through your life, and I'm pretty sure your family and everyone around you has been able to see like what God is doing. And can't wait to see what happens after. That's amazing because it's just like you can think, wow, looking back, everything that he's done, like we can, like our minds can't fathom what else he has in store. And so I can't wait to see that too, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, just now I was like, oh my gosh, and the entire time, like, oh my gosh, this is
so cool.
Amazing. Yeah,
so
this is amazing. But
that's amazing.
We'll go back to
okay.
your question. Yeah,
That's so sweet.
I'm trying to think. So, what do you know? Where Poland is at? Because it's by several countries who are kind of war torn right now. Do you know what the climate is in that way, especially regarding immigration? I mean, there's a lot of countries that are having people flee to them for protection. What is that? I mean, you actually mentioned it earlier too, that that was a reason you were thinking maybe I shouldn't go to Moody and maybe I should stay in order to help here. But since then, like, what has that been like for you?
Yeah, it's 2025. It's been 3 years of the war right now, which is crazy to think about. So it looks so much different than looked the spring and beginning of the summer that I was there before coming to Moody. And just as much as the whole thing has quieted down in US quite drastically, I don't think many people mention. Maybe recently there has been some more talks about it because of Trump is in charge and that changed some things. But yeah, I think it's pretty much forgotten in many ways. And I don't think that's necessarily the case for the countries that are closer to the situation. I do think it's more talked about there, but I do see a similar pattern. And even Poland, which is so close to the situation, which has taken so many refugees.
Yeah.
Polish people have very much moved on and forgotten about the whole situation, which
Yeah.
I'm not on top of it as much myself, because I do know that also the Ukrainian people have been learning how to live in this situation,
Mhm.
which does not make it a normal situation, but at the same time, it's not like cultivating that same panic as happens at the beginning will be helpful either. So they needed to navigate both of the things when we very much still need help and know that this is not how it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
which is kind of an, I think, metaphor for this life. No, think about it. But also, but we also need to keep living even though our country's at war. But I still follow some news and know that there are regular attacks. There's still civilians dying. The war in Ukraine is still very much on.
Mhm.
But I know that as much as there were some threats and fears in Poland about that spreading, I don't think that's really the reality now. I don't think people are living with a kind of mindset, oh, we might go to war. Though I know politically speaking, which I'm not that much involved in the politics, not staying on top of it, but I know we're having a presidential election in Poland this month. So I'm kind of trying to listen here and there what's happening, and I know that it is something that the presidents used to advocate for themselves, that we need to be serious about protection and all the military effort we can get and all of that stuff, which I know so little about, and it's so surreal to me. They very much treat it seriously, like they do see the war as a threat still, but not in a very, like, oh, it's...
forefront.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I would say this is kind of what it looks like, but it's not as much in the center of everything that's happening as it was at the beginning.
Yeah, right at first.
Yeah.
Probably one of those things where it's like, we see what's going around us.
Yeah.
Let's just be prepared.
Yeah.
Just in case of anything.
Yeah.
Because we do see that political tension and like within the U.S. and everything that's going on with China and the tariffs and whole other shebang.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, unless there's something else that you want to touch on specifically, my final question was just going to be, what are you looking forward to in your senior year here at Moody? And is there something specific that you're really excited for or really scared for? It could be either.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, yeah, it's still surreal to me that I'm gonna be a senior now. I just got here. This story feels so long ago, but then also feels like yesterday. So it's surreal to think it's my last year now. But I'm definitely excited for many things. I'm gonna be RA next year. Shout out to 6 North and the Quaxes. So that's gonna be very exciting. And with that, I'm also excited to keep studying and keep learning. The Lord has really grew my love for learning so much, and even the transition from youth ministry to biblical studies, like that itself was a big twist I have not seen coming. Looking back at my coming to Moody, and I can now tell that it's very much the Lord guiding my steps. And even that brings me back to the comment you said earlier, that me seeking the Lord and Him responding. But even in all of that retrospection, I see that He's the one seeking in the first place. Like, He really is the one that's in control, and He's the one pursuing me even when I'm not pursuing Him. And that's just been so beautiful to acknowledge. And so a big part of it that I'm very excited to continue to grow and see the Lord grow more of the passions that He's sprinkling in my life. Because I hope He's gonna give me more of a tangible sense of direction for what's coming next, because I don't have a really specific clue at the moment. Some dreams that has been giving me do include more education and do include going to Europe and responding to the need there when it comes to the church just being so small and so many people not knowing Christ and not even being around people who do.
Yeah.
So I see those kind of dreams being cultivated in my life by God, and I'm definitely excited to explore it more, which there's definitely a fear side to that of
it's unknown.
you know, yes, like it may not be as specific as I want it to be, or it may take more time, or who knows what's the story really gonna be like. But then I really appreciated what you said, because looking back at this story and how the Lord has got me to Moody is actually so helpful in thinking about the future, because I've already had some of those moments when I just think about the reality of Moody ending and I get so sad and so scared and just cannot imagine what's gonna be next. And then I remember I couldn't imagine this happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I'm gonna get here, and I didn't know how it was gonna go, and here I am. So that is a huge testimony that the Lord is using to remind me of who He is and how He works, even when not only I doubt and I don't have everything figured out, but also when different things happen and you cannot control your circumstances as well. So I'm excited to learn to trust Him more in that process as well, and to see another amazing testimony come about.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Ola, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's been an amazing time.
So
truly.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny, and this is just a little like behind the scenes story, because we had finished our podcast with Yesley, and me and Cole were walking out of this building, and we saw you, and we had just talked about like who else would we want to interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, we could interview Ola, and like she's on my floor, I can ask her. You walked by us, and so that's when we like flagged you down, and we were like,
so
Ola,
funny.
like you need to be on this podcast. So it just worked out so well, and so we're really excited that you could be here, and thank you for sharing your story and your heart, and it's really special to get to know you more. She's on my floor, so I mean not for long because she's leaving us, but it's really sad.
Love us forever in my heart.
It's true. It's true. So, but can I pray for you before we're
I'd
done?
love that.
Okay. Lord Jesus, I just thank you so much for the way that you pursue us, and you are persistent in your love and your kindness, and even when we are distant, or we're really distracted, or we're focusing on the wrong things, Father, you are so there and you're so patient with us. Thank you for Ola, and thank you for her story. Thank you for the way that you have just shown up in her life, Father, and you have made her life so far, even just in her years here, a testimonial to your goodness and your faithfulness, Father. Jesus, I pray for her last year here at Moody, and then the years beyond. And Jesus, we know that your providence is going to take her, and you're going to use her so well in ministry, Father. But I pray that you would help her now as she prepares for that. Would you help her in the right areas? Father, she's going to be an RA. Would you help the relationships that she's going to build and invest in? Would that be just all a window into what she'll get to do in the future? And her love for people is so evident. And thank you for the way that you've loved her and you've crafted her and shaped her, Father. We love you so much, and we're so grateful for Ola and just this time here, Jesus. It's your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Yay! We did it. Like and subscribe.
Leave a comment.
Yep.